You're all very welcome to this Innovate Ireland event, looking at how to make innovation stick. The Innovate Ireland style, as we've already hinted at, is very informal, conversational, and open. So anyone looking for detailed presentation content is probably going to be a little bit disappointed. And to give the first timers a little bit of context, my name's Charlie Tuxworth, and I'm one of the co-founders. And you are very, very welcome to join us today, and hopefully in the future as well. Innovate Ireland is a collaborative network that had its roots in very informal coffee shop meetings between other business commitments when I was down in Dublin. A couple of us would meet up, drink way too much coffee, and then share our innovation stories, our challenges, our worries, our aspirations. And those meetings became a really safe place to discuss, moan, share ideas, and pick up some inspiration and some ideas as well. When we realized how little support there was actually available for people who are implementing innovation in established businesses, ultimately that led to the creation of Innovate Ireland. And we have become the all-Ireland go-to community for practitioners, advocates, and explorers of innovation. There are some people from startups and early stage companies in the group, but our primary focus really is on those needing to innovate within established organizations. So we are a forum. We provide a forum that has some great content, best practice, thought leadership, and an opportunity for people to ask those all-important stupid questions. And we're now representing the views and ambitions of our 325 plus members at a national and an international level as well. For any policymakers, agencies, educators that are looking to make a positive impact on the economy, the environment, society, we can actually provide a route to the expertise, the aspirations, and the perspectives of this kind of weird, non-conventional sector that is innovation. We're completely non-commercial, so if you're involved in any way in innovation as a student, practitioner, advisor, and you're based or deliver into the island of Ireland, you're very welcome to join us. Search for us on LinkedIn, connect with Eoin or myself, and check out innovateireland.net to find out a little bit more. Okay, on to today's topic. So today's topic is making innovation stick. And for a change, Eoin and myself are hosting and an attempt at a tag team in terms of a presentation. So what we're going to do is try and keep our bit short, about 20-25 minutes. And then it'll be usually open, as usual, open up for conversation, really to give you a break from listening to the two of us for an hour. So please have questions, comments, observations ready. Eoin, so if I hand over to you to kick things off, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks very much, Charlie. Going back to what John said, rambling is the point of the exercise. This is not linear. Innovators, and we eat our own dog food. And we will have some slides. It is a bit of presentation, but it is all about the conversation. It's all about the interaction. So bear with me just a second. Okay, what have we got, folks? Is it working, Charlie?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Excellent. So this is simply the post that we put up for the event at the start of the week. And I think Charlie is trying to suggest that I don't look quite as young as I did in that picture. But I like that picture, so I'm not changing it for love nor money. Thanks very much, Charlie. You, however, looked radiant, by the way, radiant with your glorious white beard. It's very seasonal, let me say. Let me put it that way. Okay, so the content of the day, making innovation stick. Well, we are talking about that. It is a serious topic. There is a whole lot of discipline. There is a bit of science. There's a lot of learning in the background, but these are personal takes. So hopefully you'll stick with us while we share that with you. Hopefully you'll see something there that resonates with you. Certainly, I know from the conversation Charlie and I had just 5 minutes ago, that question of what do I do next to make innovation stick does happen with people who have the name tag CIO, head of innovation, or they've been just delivered the problem child as a project or a program to mind. So hopefully it'll be relevant and interesting to you. Okay, if we look at how do we make it stick, I think a useful place to start is in terms of myths. You might spot a couple here, heroes and red herrings. So there's definitely at least one red herring on the picture. The myth I'd like to start with is that innovation is hard. Well, doing some innovating is not hard, and anybody can do it. The flip side of that myth, however, is if you need to do it consistently and successfully, you've no choice but to be systematic about it. So if you know you have to be systematic, well, how are you going to achieve that? Well, there's a name for that. There's a label already fit for that purpose, and it's an innovation management system. We're not doing a lecture today on innovation management system, but we're talking about what an innovation management system might look like, why you might think about doing it that way, how would that help you to achieve your innovation objectives, and what it might look like in detail. So the arc of today is a bit of declaration, a couple of links between our declarations, a logical argument for innovation management systems. Charlie's going to go into a little bit more detail into what good looks like in that sense. What should a management system look like? And if we have enough time, we'll finish with a couple of tips from our experience, thoughts, what worked, what didn't, and we'd really love to hear the same from your perspective. Just to cross that bridge to the other side, heroes. Sometimes when I do this talk, it's quite a lot longer, and I think we can learn a lot by talking about heroes. But today I'll just give you mine. It's Darwin, and he was fumbling and he was slow, and for an upper-class English gentleman, there was a bit of humility to the man, and it took him 25 years to publish stuff that he learned. But the impact he had was absolutely astonishing. And if someone's looking to learn innovation from the outside, you can learn innovation, you can learn transformation, you can learn design thinking. Having a little look at evolution wouldn't be a bad place to start, which in fact is part of my learning journey. I learned a lot more about evolution before I learned the subject of innovation. Okay, if we go from the myths and heroes to the good stuff, well, it's not panic. It's not chaos. If we think of the picture in front of us, it's playful. At least I hope to hell they're playing. That's what I was told they're doing in this picture. Because playing is how we learn. So if you're asking yourself, what do we mean we need a system? We need to programmatically, we need to consistently innovate. It means you've got to learn. So the first fundamental I would say is innovation management system is about learning. You're putting in a learning system. And the second thing I would say to you is it's not about risk. Innovation management is not about risk. Innovation is not about risk. Risk is involved, of course, but so is not innovating risky. But what innovation is about, particularly if you're going to do it systematically for an organization over time, is about uncertainty. And being able to deal with uncertainty and to get through the layers. And how do you do that? Learning. Then the challenge, of course, is how do you integrate the practices that you need, the culture that you imagine you should have, the capabilities that you do have or you don't have, or you don't even know if you have this capability, or you don't know which of your capabilities you're going to leverage more to help you get to where you need to go. How do you integrate that with planning? How do you pick a starting point and just go? Well, if you're doing those things, if you're starting to do those things, you are building a system. And if you're wondering first steps or easy version of what's the technique, it's simple. It's crawl, work, run. Pick a start, pick an initiative, learn from it. There's more to it, and we'll have a look. Most people in this island like tea. Making a cup of tea is simple. But if you don't know me, making a cup of tea for me is a challenge. Making lots of cups of tea frequently, consistently is an even bigger challenge. So the declaration here is really simple. If you're innovating, you have to have a system. If you're innovating in an organization, that is an innovation management system. And then the question is, what does that look like? Well, praise the Lord, pass the biscuits. This version is straight out of the NSAI. This is my coffee stained, always on the desk version, and that's 56,002. It tells you very little about how you should do all the things you need to do, but it's a fantastic resource. It's only 20 pages long. It's a whole lot easier to use than most business books. And it can demystify, and it can prevent dependency on consultants. Consultants. And it could be a really useful checklist to get you all the way to where you want to go, top of Mount Everest, for instance. It's not enough. You'll need a guru, you'll need the right toolkit, you'll need to do a whole lot of learning. But The declaration is simple. If you're going to innovate, you need a system. If you're going to do it successfully, you really, really need a system. Then we need to start thinking about what a good system looks like. And the fairly obvious riposte or way of thinking about that is there is no one lens that gets you to a good system. But if you take the learning and uncertainties as starting points, and then if you take your system as the hooks and links between the people, far before you consider whether you're following this process or that process, or lean or some other methodology. And then if you realize that the toolkit you need changes for each circumstance, changes for each campaign, each sprint, each initiatives, then you're already crawl, walk, run. You're doing the progression that gets you to a capable, learning, performing innovation management system. Back to my tea-stained and coffee-stained standard. It's organized really simple, 56002. Start with, where are we? Situational awareness of the organization, context. Then what do our leaders need to do? And it's pretty straightforward. How do we plan for innovation? What resources do we need for innovation? What are the basic processes we need? How do we operate this thing that we called an innovation management system? Then having set that up, you evaluate it and you learn and you improve it on a constant cycle. So there's nothing different there between an innovation system and another system. But a lot of the other systems that people in our professional worlds operate are operating systems. They are to achieve a particular level, a quality, a conformance. And the huge advantage we have in the innovation world is we're not trying to conform. We don't need documents, we need hooks and links. This image came from Magnus Carlsen. I'm sure Vito and others recognize it. And Magnus used that when presenting to the National Standards Authority of Ireland when he was helping the NSAI to develop one of their competence development programs. And it has been adopted by Enterprise Ireland IDA as the basis of some of their innovation programs, ensuring that their clients systematically innovate rather than dive in, get some innovation theater, even get a really good result, and then all fades away over 3 months, 6 months. So having had a quick tour around what we mean by innovating systems, and having made a couple of declarations, I will very cowardly just simply say, hey, I've done my piece, and hand over to Charlie, who's going to show us, if you like, a worked example. What might a good system look like?
Okay, thank you. Let me know if you're seeing anything. Yep, good stuff. Excuse me. So we know that startups generally build or built around an idea, a new idea, new to the world, new to the sector, whatever it is. So it's quite natural for companies needing to innovate, to transform, to change, to also start by looking for ideas. They take those ideas, develop them, validate them, and turn them into something valuable for the business, whatever that value looks like. And for a long time, innovation has been all about this. It's the light bulb moment. It's kind of that spark, the genius of the spark of genius, the aha moment, all that sort of stuff. It is a really good place to start, and without an idea, you're not going to be doing any kind of innovation. But on its own, it doesn't make innovation stick. So what I'm about to kind of go through is kind of the lessons that I've learned on trying to make innovation stick within a large enterprise. So it's 4,500 people in a UK financial services PLC. It's taking the idea stage and making it become more like business as usual. So ideas absolutely sit at the heart of innovation, and generally, generation of ideas is a really valuable activity. And it becomes a magnet for anybody looking to change, to transform, as I've said, because we can all come up with ideas in one form or another. It's quite an approachable thing to do. It's a really good place to start. And it can be fun as well. It's a chance to step away from the day job and use one of a multiple number of techniques to think differently about the challenges we're facing. So ideation is a brilliant tactic to address one specific issue or exploit one particular opportunity. And there are so many techniques, and we could spend the rest of this session and a lot more talking about the different techniques that you can use to generate ideas. Design thinking, creativity techniques, metaphor, provocation techniques, horizon scanning, collaboration, and so on. I tend to refer to these collectively as panning for gold, partly because you're hoping to find something wonderful, but it's also a reminder to have very, very realistic expectations about where you're going to get to. If you're panning for gold, old style like this guy here, you are never going to find a golden chalice. You might find a nugget of gold if you're really lucky, but what's probably going to happen is you're going to find a little speck of gold, something shiny that grabs your attention. On its own, it's got very, very limited intrinsic value. But if you combine it with others, you work it, you polish it and shape it into something, then you can have something that's of real value. So what the ideation techniques do basically is distract us, take us away from the business as usual, so we can spot these little glimmers of gold, these little sharp, kind of bright sparks, if you like, to look up on. But as I say, on its own, it doesn't embed innovation within the company's DNA. I work with a lot of companies who can start with ideation and then this enthusiasm that they have for generating new ideas tends to wane, it tends to die. And the support at the top level drops off because, God, not that kind of gig again. We've already done innovation, haven't we? We've got it on our website. We've ticked that box. Or business priorities take over. The day-to-day gets in the way of doing it. So what do we need to do beyond ideation in order to make innovation stick? Well, what we found was that we needed to make sure that the people directing and delivering innovation had to really understand what it was within their own context and how to go about it in a repeatable manner. So we had to look at education, tools, techniques that could manage a process as well as just generate ideas. And this was all about building capability, competency, and confidence in the innovation process across the whole organization. So the things like the creativity techniques are great in a really small group. They're really good fun, they're really engaging. But if you've got within your organization a really diverse group of individuals, which most organizations do, and you can kind of widen your innovation gene pool and get ideas from all over the place, you're going to come up with ideas that you have never thought of before, because it's not focused in one team or one individual. It's everybody's responsibility. To do that, they have to have the capability. Quite often, operations teams, we would find, were reluctant to take novel, challenging ideas through to implementation, partly because of a lack of understanding. That takes us back to capability. But more often than not, it's because the ideas generated, while really novel, really interesting, didn't address the real needs and priorities of the business. Basically, there was a lack of strategy. Any effective business of any decent size has a clear strategy for how they're going to operate, how they're going to deliver what they're trying to achieve. Larger organizations would have a very clear strategy for marketing, for HR, for IT, for finance, for legal, and so on. So they all have these standalone strategies defined that support and feed into the business objectives, but they also stand up on their own 2 feet as well, if you like. If we have a well-formed innovation strategy to replicate what they do in marketing, HR, and so on, then what we can do is set the tone. We can set some ground rules for innovation. We can have a very clear vision for where we're trying to get to. We can define innovation as it's relevant to our own organization. And ultimately, we can give credibility to the innovation function. So we can secure a seat at the board table for innovation to sit alongside HR, marketing, IT, and so on. So it's no longer this kind of tactical ad hoc activity. It's part of the core business. It gets a hearing, if you like, every month at the senior level. If we want to get organizational-wide buy-in and support, and we have a strategy, then we need to communicate. We need to communicate progress that we're making and the results that we're getting. So we need to have measures. We need to have KPIs relating to innovation. I'm not saying these are easy to define, but they can be defined. Innovation has to demonstrate return on investment in some form, whether it's bottom line, whether it's cost efficiencies or efficiency gains, whether it's growth, whatever it is, it has to demonstrate return on investment. If it can't demonstrate some return on investment, then why would the board bother with it? Why would they continue? And conversely, if you can see and demonstrate that you can add value through innovation, then why wouldn't they continue? And also, if we have a strategy and a direction, a vision for innovation, and we're measuring and the outcomes aren't what we expect, then we can do what startups do. We can pivot, we can change direction subtly, knowing that we're generally still heading towards that guiding star, that vision that we've got for innovation. And that's giving us something to aim at in the longer term. I suppose finally in this picture, if innovation isn't aligned to the business ambitions, it's going to die, because investing in innovation doesn't hit this month's targets or next quarter's figures. It's much, much longer than that. So the innovation strategy and the activities we do have to be aligned to the wider business context. And imagine if you can demonstrate the value with direct line of sight from an idea that you've got, which was raised from a challenge that you've put out there, which is aligned to a strategically important area for the business, and then continue that through onto a demonstrable, direct and material impact on the core corporate objectives. Why wouldn't that idea be taken forward? You're doing exactly what the board have asked from you, but you're doing it through innovation. If you combine this together, then you have a very simplified, structured, sticky and sustainable approach to innovation. You've got a framework for sustainable innovation. Or to use kind of current terminology, what you've got is an innovation management system. So that, I suppose, in sort of Celcio and myself, that's where our understanding and our experience took us. We said these are the things that we believe an organization needs to have. But that's just Charlie's view, it's my view. So how can we be confident that what I've gone through, the lessons that I've learned, actually reflect or are anywhere near aligned to international thinking and best practice? And Eoin's kind of touched on this already. The good news is there's an international standard for that. A lot of you are aware of this, ISO 56002 2019. 56002 quite simply defines what good looks like when it comes to systematic and managed innovation. And there are a number of core principles of leadership, planning, delivery, support, measurement, improvement, context, culture. The alignment between that standard and what I've just kind of talked through isn't 100%, and it's not a one-to-one mapping like this might suggest, but it broadly covers everything that ISO, 150 plus countries that got involved in that, said should be looked at, should be considered if you're looking at innovation. As a standard, it's quite approachable compared to some of the other ones that are out there. And what it does is formalize the processes, procedures, and the responsibilities for embedding innovation in an organization. But it is a framework, and I'm sure Eoin's going to pick up on some of this stuff. It's a framework, it's guidance, it isn't mandatory. At no point does it tell you how to do innovation. It's not going to tell you you must use design thinking or creativity sessions or this way to validate your ideas. But instead what it does is kind of put a surround around that and says, when you're doing that innovation, make sure you think of all this other stuff like barriers, risks, uncertainty, who you might want to partner with, how you're going to measure it, what your vision is, what your definition is. So a strategy basically pulls all this together into an innovation management system. I think, Eoin, that's where I'm going to hand back to you for the interest of time. That's okay?
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. I'll just look to share slides again, Charlie.
Yep.
Okay, it looks like we're in business again. So you've seen this before, and actually the last slide that Charlie ended up in pretty much the same place. So we're looking on the left-hand side at how the standard is organized. We're just seeing up at the top some of the organizations that are already using it in Ireland and Sweden and beyond. And Viljo and I have been in the same room for years together developing these standards, so he can give you his own experience from Sweden perhaps later in the hour. So where do you start? Well, you can spend a month and not open the standard at all. Just look at that left-hand side of the page. What should I do about leadership? What should I do about planning? Just like Charlie's slide just told you. You can also, the most tea-stained page in the whole thing for me, ask yourself these 8 principle-based questions. Am I, in my organization, ensuring their innovation efforts are realizing value? Am I developing future-focused leaders, or are my leaders future-focused? Are they focused on tomorrow, or are they focused on 5 years? Scenarios, horizon scanning, as Charlie mentioned. Do we have clear strategic direction? Is the strategic direction of the organization actually providing space and clear direction for innovation? If not, take 3 steps back, sort that first, or you're going to go precisely nowhere. Again, Charlie's work example showed that as well. What kind of culture should we be looking at, and how should we get it? The good news, if you're developing capabilities and developing strategy and developing future-focused leaders, you're developing the right culture you're going to need. You need to be able to exploit your insights, And you have to be able to manage uncertainty. What does that mean? How might we do that? The standard video and I have worked on the last 2 years is precisely about that. How you manage uncertainty when you're managing opportunity spaces, opportunities, challenges, ideas, concepts, and to the point where you're validating and selecting individual concepts for development. Adaptability. Your system cannot be fixed. Think of Darwin again. It is not the strong that survives. It is the adaptable. And finally, it has to be a systems approach. If you're not looking for which box to tick, you're not going to tick it. If you're ticking for compliance, your box ticking isn't add value. But you're ticking boxes in order to those 8 principles we just discussed, which are on page 6 of ISO 56002. It's a really easy thing to have on your desk. Go get one. That's an easy way to start. Okay, moving swiftly along, and then we'll conclude in just a couple of minutes. Here are some other, just pictures we don't need to dive into. Other ways of conceiving what does a good system look like. 1, there are lots of processes and things we do, and it shouldn't be linear. But you do want to get your identification of opportunities and challenges, and you want to progress that. So your progression should look something like this. You're discovering, you're ideating, you're selecting, testing and validating, testing and selection. You're developing, and now we're starting to look at projects and implementation, and then you're deploying and scaling. And of course, if we look at the definition of the word innovation, discovery, you don't have an innovation. Ideation, you don't have an innovation. Selection, you don't have an innovation. You only have an innovation after deployment. And that's absolutely, completely essential to treat innovation systematically, to develop an innovation management system. You have to understand that and get that deep into your roots to make progress. Charlie mentioned measurement. What should we expect of measurement? Well, how about this? If you're exploring, you should expect learning, and you should measure for learning. If you're incubating, you should expect data, not returns. If you're exploiting insights and you've got something that's pretty well known, the uncertainty is low, you should be starting to look at potential for return on investment and adding value in the short to medium term, and not before. So there's a very quick and simple, and too simple, version of what measurement might mean. Similar picture, what does the system look like? Well, it's got process elements, it's got governance elements, it's got support elements. I won't dive any further. Just a different picture. That one came from a Swedish organization that Vilo knows to an extent, Innovation 360. This one I have borrowed from the upcoming ISO 56007. So we talked about processes before. What's happening? What are people doing when they're trying to execute those processes? Well, there's a very simple visualization. When you're identifying opportunities, you're doing all or some of those bullet point activities in that bubble. And it doesn't always go in one direction. You do identification, then concept creation. You should be learning and having quick learning cycles and constantly changing your focus so that you learn as fast as possible, as much as possible. Speed and to an extent volume delivers performance, delivers value. Here's one version of a 10-step process I've used over the years with organizations to build a strategy, the capabilities, and the system that supports them, so that organizations have a 3 to 5 year view and execute successfully over that time frame. This is not the only process in the world. This is mine, and I've stolen some of it from Magnus Penker, again, a gentleman that Vilo knows of. A couple of quick tips, and I'll pass back to Charlie and we'll open for questions. Systems should be good and simple, but there's a limit to how simple it can be, or it won't achieve what you need. Blindingly obvious, but completely essential in thinking about management systems. It's not documents. We're not trying to comply with anything. It's the hooks and links between people. If you're wondering how to produce a strategy, lots of different ways. Wordly maps, really interesting. Funnily enough, Vilo can speak to that as well. And pestle analysis, scenarios, horizon scanning. You have to put uncertainty ahead of risk in your thinking to produce a good system. And you need learning cycle, multiple, and as fast as possible. You got to balance your portfolio, got to have your ambition. If all of your innovation is Horizon 1 incremental, you're going to achieve almost exactly what everybody else in your sector is achieving. The final point for me is toolkits are specific to the campaign, the opportunity. There's no such thing as a perfect toolkit. It's just what works here and now for us. What are the right ways of working? Do we have a clear challenge? Do we have a right team? Now we need a good toolkit or a way of making progress. So those are things that have helped me over the years in building systems. I think we've seen enough slides for the day, so I will stop that nonsense. And I think we will open to the floor for questions on foot of any last comments from you, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is that when we were talking about the ISO standards, that's one definition of innovation of what good looks like. But it is the world leading view of what good looks like for managed innovation. Before I started looking at ISO for this, we had an innovation management system defined, but we found we were actually aligned to EFQM. Some of you might have come across the EFQ, European Foundation for Quality Management. They had an innovation lenses and innovation excellence model. What we do is kind of it supports ISO, but it also supports EFQM. So I'm confident that ISO is the superset of what EFQM and other systems are saying. EFQM has different quadrants, if you like. They talk about direction, delivery, results, and climate, but it's basically the same core components that need to be addressed within it. I was thinking, so it's not a pure ISO picture, this, but ISO has evolved on further and is more international, more independent, in my view. Yeah, to open up the floor to anybody that has a comment, question, challenge, anything they'd like to ask. Or we will come fishing for questions.
No, well, guys, thanks a million for sharing the innovation management system thing. Just a couple of things, maybe more asking you to clarify, but the leadership of innovation, when anything is written about that, the titles of books and stuff like that are usually the metaphors chosen reflect the difficulty of the role, like grabbing lightning or controlled schizophrenia is a good one. And that capacity, depending on the stage in the innovation value chain of whether it's transformational leadership or transactional leadership, what sort of experiences have you got, or who do you look to, or what insights have you got about where innovation management reports to and the type of leadership that makes it thrive?
I think there's two types of leadership as it comes to innovation. One is that inspirational figure that people look to and they want to follow within their organizations. But the leadership certainly within the context of the ISO is about leading the process, leading the system, and making sure that things are done properly in a structured way and following the context that you have set for your own organization. So there are two slightly different things. Certainly the leadership skills as it relates to innovation management systems, they're a skill that can be learned, the same as any other skill can be. What a training course, what mentoring, what coaching isn't necessarily going to do is make you that kind of person that people are going to look to and go, wow, we want to listen to Peter because he's got this aura of innovation, creativity about him. He's the kind of person we want to follow. I don't know how you deal with that one. I think that isn't necessarily can be taught. It is maybe slightly more innate in the individual, but certainly any of the innovation skills that fall within this they're skills. They can be taught, and you can build competency, capability, and confidence to actually deliver on them. Owen, do you have anything on the other aspect of leadership?
No, crawl, walk, run for leadership practices, absolutely. The learning cycles, if you create the lattice work that people can work with, not necessarily always within, you need to allow people to go outside the lines. But if you take the change management, active, visible, ongoing, clear sponsorship from senior leadership first, backed up by the same from the direct, whatever you talk about in structures, whether it's a matrix, but there's some element of hierarchy in most organizations. So if people are getting that, and if there is a clear strategy And if the leaders are developing it all in the right direction, crawl, walk, run. But if it's not in the strategy, it's got to put it there. And if the leaders don't know how to lead in a way that innovates, crawl, walk, run, coach, coach, coach.
And just to pick up on that as well. I mean, we've worked with organizations, or been asked to work with organizations where it's one of the first questions is, are the leadership team bought into this? Do they believe in what you're trying to achieve here? And if the question is no, and when they're not open to conversation, to education, to kind of building their own understanding and capability, then we should walk away from it, because they are not going to change in that organization. It doesn't matter how good the ideas are, that top level doesn't get it. It's going to be just a really, really tough battle. But if you do have some element of ownership there and sort of buy-in, then yeah, start small. It's taking small chunks. Don't try and transform the organization through innovation. Solve a problem, address a challenge, exploit an opportunity through thinking differently, and tell stories. It's a case study. It's an example. This worked really well for us. Eoin did this, and this is the outcome of it. And then we found that it almost starts to build virally. That people go, God, that sounds good. It sounds interesting, excited. Can I try it as well? And we built it within organizations from a very, very small team of 4 or 5 people up to having pockets of 4 or 5 people across the organization. So it's a different style of, it's not that top-down leadership, but it's kind of getting it across the organization. If that
Peter,
answers your question at all, Peter.
Comment, but Paul is also looking to come in. So final comment from you, Peter, and then over to Paul.
Well, I just think that innovation attracts certain people within an organization. People that might be more imaginative or creative or engaged. And therefore, when you characterize it as a project management, they will exit very quickly. So it always needs energy. It needs energy that you've got to take the heat from above, and you've got to give some energy below, and be magnifying. And so yeah, I know what you mean. Sorry, there's no universal blueprint, but the leadership is so important. Of course, the strategic alignment is vital, but then the visible coaching, encouraging, supportive leadership is a huge thing, rather than it being another process.
It is.
Yeah, and the system
it is. And if you don't,
sorry, Charlie,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
no,
sorry.
You go ahead.
Thank you. The system doesn't deliver everything that you want, but it's necessary for everything that you want on any kind of scale over a significant amount of time. So the system should provide your hooks and links for your leadership to thrive. And then the strategy and the other elements come in. So I think we are seeing enough variations of the same hymn sheet there. Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, I was going to say you do need the people within an environment that will challenge, will think differently, will be kind of add that spark to the room. If that's all you have in your innovation function, then they're all ideas people, and nobody's ever going to implement anything because they want to go on to the next shiny thing. So you need a balance between the inspirational people, the lone wolves, all that kind of stuff, and people that can actually commercialize these things, realize them, add value to the organization, because it's that realization that's going to add more funding to allow them to do more of the same. And that's why the systematic bit comes in. It's not saying instead of those inspirational people, it's a wrapper around them. Paul, you've been really patient, so I think we come to Paul before we go anywhere else.
Yeah, so I suppose there's kind of a couple of comments really early on in the presentation which kind of sparked something for me. I think it was whenever Eoin was talking really at the start. I think whenever you're talking about learning and play and crawl, walk, run, it almost kind of strikes me though that the challenge almost comes down to capacity challenge in organizations. Whenever we talk about people burnout and so on, is that really what you're looking to do is that it's like a fight between innovation for reinvention versus business as usual. And business as usual is just so dominant, and that it's not that organizations can't innovate, or, don't have the skills or experience or anything else. It's almost that the organization itself is so BAU focused that there just isn't the capacity to do it. And the people who are probably, whether it's the inspirational leaders or the people who have the energy, they want to drive the change, but it's just the oxygen isn't there to sustain it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's where we would come from in terms of having a strategy, measures, KPIs for innovation that sit at the board level. So they are the delivery is being judged on those KPIs as much as the turnover, sales targets, delivery targets, and so on. Because if they're not there and not being measured and tracked on a month-by-month basis and showing up as red indicators because no progress has been made, it just gets pushed out in the long finger. And innovation tends to fall into the same place as training. Things are tight, you cut training, you cut innovation because we need to deliver business as usual. But if you're being judged as an organization on a level of innovation activity, it kind of raises the profile and the importance of getting it done. And the person leading innovation can say, I'm not going to hit that target unless I get people. So I need Paul, John, and Eric next month for whatever this in order to deliver something. And because you're being measured on it, it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, it almost kind of.
Sorry, Paul.
No, just
clarity will give you capacity. That's it. If you can get clarity, there's your argument for capacity.
Yeah, it almost kind of strikes me whenever people talk about innovation theater that it's almost like an event where people have tried it. They can kind of say, well, we tried it, it didn't work. It's kind of innovation's not for us, that it's kind of it's
like feng shui.
Yeah, they've gone through the motions, and there's almost an intent that people almost want to kill it off. That they want us to loot it, but actually they don't really want to pursue it.
Yeah. I'm running or delivering on a program at the moment. We've spoken to 100 SMEs and given them a leg up into starting with innovation. In fact, Paul, you were one of them. And it's sort of a key element of that is, having noticed that you were one of them is kind of throwing me off my completely off the tangent here now. Where was it going with that? Come back to me. I forgot what I was going to say.
You must be a very intimidating student, Charlie.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, no, sorry, I know what it was. It was the definition of innovation. So many of the organizations we've been speaking to are saying we didn't realize innovation was relevant to us because we keep getting told by support agencies that it's about invention. It's about world firsts. We don't want to invent anything, but we want to use transformative technologies to change what we're doing today. And we're saying to them, that is innovation. It counts as innovation. And that's a big obstacle we need to deal with culturally. Societal and from the government point of view to stop equating innovation with only invention because it's much broader than that. I'll get off my soapbox and answer some questions.
What I could suggest there is if we go to Vilio put in a good comment on the chat in response to Eleanor. So Vilio, can you just explain what you were saying in the chat there?
Yeah, so Eleanor gave the typical example of the leadership team tells her to, you're the one that should do innovation. Great. It's important. Thank you. Bye. What you can do then, obviously, as a consultant, I would say, go get the consultant, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't want to do that, you can get the standard. You can use that framework. NSAI now has a great assessment tool, I guess, which will be coming out, which is in line with the assessments that we use in Sweden, and use that to really build a quick scorecard with colors that says, we're good here, we're shit here, and if you want me to do my job, you need to make those red ones at least yellow. Help me do that. Or else let me do something else because I'm not going to succeed.
Frank.
Yeah, I was gonna I think Eleanor's one is the absolute pivotal one, and I don't want to be too negative, okay? Because you can overstate this. But the biggest challenge I have with embedding innovation theory or innovation culture is most of my clients will be SMEs, and they don't have good strategy. So they get up every morning, they work their asses off, they do stuff, they go to bed, and they repeat what they did the previous day. And if when you get and often these guys have strategic documents, mission statement, vision. It's all bullshit. It's they went through the feng shui of business theory. We're going to do feng shui. We did feng shui. We're going to do strategy now. Oh, we've done strategy. Let's do. But they're not deeply invested. And for me, if the innovation process is being sent to somebody who's dynamic and enthusiastic and young, that's probably not going to work out. I think the CEO has to do innovation, because innovation is basically the next, the what are the prequels before? What's after?
Sequel.
What's the? No. There's the prequel before the book. There's the next, the next version of Star Wars. So innovation is the next chapter of strategy. So if you don't have a book that you believe in that describes your strategy, the chapter on innovation is going to suck.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Brilliant. So Shane, I saw you put a comment in about Chinese and the symbol in the middle. Are you in a position to elaborate on that at all?
Owen, I put that in about 3 weeks ago.
That was last week.
Call.
You're scrolling up too high, Owen. It's not that high in the chat. But Shane, you did have a question about, and a point in there about the KPIs and things, not innovation priorities being overruled by economic necessity.
Yeah, even I mean, I guess I've seen this happen a few times where, even when the senior management are saluting and everyone's saying it's a great idea and whatever, but when you drill into the people who are being asked to divert some of their energy away from today into tomorrow, if you like, they're going, but hang on, I have my review in 3 months' time, and that says my bottom line needs to be up by 10%. And how do I account for this time? And if I can't, I'll go to the meeting and I'll spend half an hour nodding along, and then I'll go back to making money for myself. Yeah. And that's a very blunt view of it, but I've seen it happen a few times. And and it's in situations where the people are sponsoring this at the highest level, but still it just quietly doesn't happen.
But some of those people are potentially doing it for innovation theatre, so they can tell people we are an innovative organisation. So they kick it off. They don't really care, not really interested in it, and they maybe go too big. They want to be an innovative organisation. Well, don't go to be an innovative organisation. Add innovation to one team, one function, one area of the business, one sticky, tricky challenge that you've been bashing your heads against the wall for years potentially, and that you are never going to fix by doing more of the same and just working harder. Otherwise, you would have fixed it. And think about those problems in a different way, fix those, and then use those as the test cases, the case studies for saying, actually, we could do this elsewhere. So I think if anybody or organization says we need to innovate, let's do it everywhere. Go, no, scale it down, get it working, get the processes that work for you as thin or as thick as they need to be, but get them working for you, and then take it from there and grow it from there.
So Charlie,
Eleanor, so I was just going to say, Eleanor's question about kind of leadership. I think part of it is about educating the leadership team as well, and getting them to understand why they think the way they do. Why they're stuck in this world of what is the way things have always been done around here. And there's some real barroom basic psychology in there. But if people start to understand why they find it difficult to change, then they're actually more open to change and to kind of accepting challenge as well. Maybe it's a side conversation. It's a bit deep for this one. But
one of the other questions I spotted in the chat, by the way, I'm looking at the chat up and down. I'm just nodding at the chat. The chat's fantastic. So one of the questions is about training. So if we look at Avilio is in the room, in Sweden, there's an Innovation Leaders Association, and I won't pronounce that in Swedish, although Avilio might. And then they have a competency framework. So there's a ladder that an innovation professional can climb in Sweden. We are working on that in Ireland. That's part of what Innovate Ireland works on. Charlie is now going to be in the very lucky position of being an unpaid and overworked leader developing the ISO competence framework for innovation professionals. I'm helping him with that, and we've had international support so far.
not for it's the difference is that the ISO one is not going to be for innovation professionals.
You're right.
It's a set of skills and competency levels that an organization, a team needs to have across the team. So it's not about making innovation gurus or experts. It's about saying this team needs to get going. What are some skills where they can actually start to make some inroads? And some will be about ideation, some will be about validation, some will be about understanding uncertainty. So building that competency as a team game rather than an individual guru because that's what's not there at the moment. If you want to become an innovation professional, you can do that through various schemes. But if you want to develop the capability of your team, there's nothing there at the moment. Outside of Innovate Ireland, I can probably help you on that, but within Innovate Ireland, there's nothing sort of published and open yet.
Brilliant. So I wonder if Peter or Shirley or any of the other education professionals would have a comment on where you might start in training as an innovation professional.
Yeah, well, sorry, I've been looking at this a lot for a piece of research I'm doing. So interestingly, in all the major universities, the AACSB is the prestige, gold standard of universities around the world. And they've gone from offering 0 qualifications that have innovation management or innovation in the name of the degree or in the major or in the minor to now having several hundred in the last couple of years, several hundred degrees available with innovation management in the major or minor. But most of them, of course, are postgraduate. But just to your point, I think Charlie's on to something there, because I did a bit of research with interviews with hirers to say, if you're hiring somebody for an innovation management role, what qualifications are you expecting to see them have? Well, most of them are saying, well, if it's a senior role and we want somebody with about 15 years experience, there will not have been any qualifications available. So that in that case, we're going for an MBA plus experience of landing some big projects in a large, complex organization. And for internal roles in a big FMCG global company, they said, just as you were saying, we don't really want to build another innovation management ivory tower, because we've got one for sustainability, we've got one for IT, and we've got one for HR. These things that are kind of aloof from the business and aren't. So we would rather see, so I think maybe it's small I innovation, but diffused throughout the organization. So anyway, just interesting. And I've got a list I'm going to share with you at some point, Charlie, of looking across from Australia to Sweden, largely the US, all of the groups like this group who have begun to start creating qualifications and certification of innovation management. So I kind of have a list. It'd be interesting for you to see.
Absolutely, please. Thank you. Shirley, do you want to come in on that? Because I know we're working very closely with you on this. So.
Yeah, no problem. I suppose rather than innovation specialists per se, I would see innovation very much as an essential skill for all managers. That's why, like finance, if you're doing an MBA, everybody does a finance module. Everybody does an innovation module. So when we look at not so much skills of the future skills, innovation, if we look at this skills need that's coming across many different disciplines and World Economic Forum, innovation is up there and one of the top 3 skills, alongside creativity, alongside collaboration. So I see it very much holistically as an essential core skill for all of our students. Okay, so that's one of the reasons, Charlie, if you want to come in, talk a little bit about we looked at the framework for innovation skills. Charlie, do you want to pick up on that? So that's the approach. So, and we're increasingly seeing not just innovation, sustainable innovation as increasingly important as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that we do. I mean, my company, we created a framework for innovation skills that Shirley and the University of Ulster kind of took a look at and sort of checked the validity of it, what else was out there, and that's one of the feeds that will go into the ISO equivalent. And I've actually got a call out across the ISO community at the moment. I'm going to put one into Innovate Ireland for anybody that has frameworks, professionalization models, that they're able to share something of it, so that we can just check that everything is there and that we're not missing anything. So Peter, it would be really good to have a conversation with you on that. If you're happy to share some of your findings, they will find their way into this discussion. And Eoin, yes, I'm conscious of time.
You can expect a delivery from Sweden, Charlie. You will get something from SIS on everything that we have in Sweden.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed.
So I think, in fact, it is probably time to wrap up. As you've no doubt guessed, Charlie or I individually, never mind the two of us together, could talk all day on this subject, and you'd have a lovely nap, So Thank you for keeping us honest. Thank you for sticking with us for the hour. It was a great conversation. Would love to extend that the next time. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Just to emphasize to those who have access, we will be back here next Friday. Frank Hannigan, who just left a couple of minutes ago, is going to do a session on Irish culture and how it provides a unique platform for innovation. And that's a mirror of a session we did very recently where we had Anirban, who's on the call today, and Krishnan Naganathan, who did a talk on what we can learn from India, not just Jugad. So it's not just, but it's also a flip of that conversation, keeping the links, keeping the constellation, the network, the community moving. Charlie, if you've got anything else to say, please do. But other than that, from me,
I don't think I have time. So thank you everyone for participating. It's been really good to see you. Useful discussion as ever. So hopefully see good for you next week. And have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Good job.